Dog goes to say goodbye to his police handler, but suddenly blocks a fake doctor. Sarah Collins hated hospitals. After 6 years of working high-stakes cases with the Atlanta PD's K9 unit, she'd seen enough of them to last a lifetime. But this time was different. She was the one in the bed, trapped in a paper-thin gown, with an IV drip keeping time like a metronome beside her. Appendicitis. Of all the things that could sideline her, it had to be something so mundane. The surgery had gone smoothly, they told her, but protocol demanded 24 hours of observation. 24 hours without Max, her Belgian Malinois partner, felt like an eternity. A knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. Nurse Chen's familiar face appeared, along with an unexpected smile. "Someone's here to see you, Detective Collins. We made an exception to the no pets policy given your unique situation." Sarah's heart lifted as Max's black and tan form appeared in the doorway, his tactical harness replaced by his therapy dog vest, a necessary compromise for hospital access. His nails clicked against the linoleum as he approached her bed, his usual boundless energy contained in careful, measured steps. "Hey, partner!" Sarah's voice cracked slightly as she reached out to scratch behind his ears. Max leaned into her touch, his warm brown eyes fixed on her face with an intensity that made her throat tight. He'd saved her life more times than she could count, but this was different. This was Max being there simply because she needed him. Nurse Chen smiled at their reunion. "Dr. Peterson will be in shortly for your final check before discharge. I'll leave you two alone for a few minutes." The door closed softly behind her, leaving Sarah and Max in comfortable silence. Max settled into a sitting position beside her bed, his body pressed against the metal frame, close enough that she could rest her hand on his head. The steady rise and fall of his breathing matched the rhythm of her heart monitor. "You should see the squad room without us," Sarah murmured. "Rodriguez says the energy's all wrong. Turns out you're the heart of the K9 unit, buddy." Max's tail thumped once against the floor in response. The peaceful moment shattered as the door opened again. A tall man in a white coat entered, his eyes fixed on a clipboard. "Detective Collins, I'm Dr. Peterson. Just need to do your final evaluation before—" Max's transformation was instant and absolute. His muscles tensed beneath Sarah's hand as a low growl rumbled in his chest. He rose slowly, positioning himself between Sarah's bed and the doctor, his hackles raised. "Max?" Sarah's police instincts, dulled by pain medication and recovery, snapped to attention. In 6 years of partnership, she'd never seen him react this way to medical personnel, not even during their most stressful cases. "It's all right," the doctor said smoothly, taking a step forward. "Dogs often react differently in hospital settings." Max's growl deepened, his teeth now visible. Sarah's eyes narrowed, focusing on details her partner had already sensed were wrong. The ID badge that sat slightly askew, the way he held the clipboard, not like someone who carried one daily, the slight bulge in his right coat pocket that shouldn't be there. The doctor reached for her IV line with practiced efficiency. Max lunged forward, his jaws clamping around the man's forearm. A syringe clattered to the floor as he yelled in pain and surprise. Sarah's training kicked in through the fog of medication. She hit the nurse call button repeatedly, then pulled her phone from the bedside table. "Atlanta PD, I need officers at Grady Memorial, room 412. Possible hostile?" The man tried to bolt for the door, but Max was faster. He positioned himself in the doorway, his stance wide and threatening, keeping the imposter trapped until the sound of running footsteps filled the hallway. Security arrived first, then uniformed officers, and finally her own colleagues from major crimes. The doctor was cuffed and removed, the syringe carefully bagged as evidence. Through it all, Max maintained his position by her bed, his eyes tracking every movement in the room. Hours later, as the sun set beyond her window, Sarah learned the truth. The man was Michael Turner, a former nurse with a grudge against law enforcement. The syringe contained a cocktail of drugs that would have appeared to cause natural complications. She would have been his fourth victim. The other 3 were still in comas across different hospitals in the southeast. Sarah ran her fingers through Max's fur, feeling the tension still present in his muscles. "You knew, didn't you?" Before any of us, you knew something was wrong. Max turned his head to look at her, and she saw in his eyes what she'd always known. Their partnership went far beyond training and duty. It was instinct, trust, and something deeper that no one else could quite understand. Lieutenant Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, his face grave. "Collins, you're not going to believe what we found in Turner's apartment. This goes way beyond one rogue nurse with a vendetta." Sarah felt Max shift beside her, his body alert but steady. Whatever was coming, they would face it together. "Tell me everything," she said, her hand never leaving her partner's fur. As Rodriguez began to outline a conspiracy that would shake the medical community to its core, Sarah realized that her simple appendectomy had unveiled something far more sinister. Their hospital room had become the first battlefield in what promised to be their most personal case yet. Max's ears twitched forward, catching every word. Sarah smiled grimly. They might have tried to take her out of action, but they'd failed to account for one crucial detail. She wasn't just any detective. She was a K-9 handler, and her partner never stopped being a cop, even during a hospital visit. The hospital room had transformed into a makeshift command center. Sarah sat propped up in her bed, surrounded by case files and laptop screens, while Max maintained his vigilant position by her side. The overhead lights cast harsh shadows across the crime scene photos Lieutenant Rodriguez had brought. 3 officers in 3 different hospitals, all seemingly victims of routine procedures gone wrong. "They're calling them medical complications," Rodriguez said, his voice tight with anger. "Natural reactions to standard treatments. But you're the first one who's actually conscious to tell us different." Sarah studied the photos, her trained eye catching details others might miss. Officer Janet Chen, Atlanta PD, collapsed after knee surgery. Detective Marcus Williams, Savannah PD, never woke up from a shoulder operation. Sergeant Karen Foster, Birmingham PD, in a coma following gallbladder removal. All routine procedures, all law enforcement. "Max," Sarah called softly. Her partner's ears perked up immediately. "Remember how you reacted to Turner? I need you to check something." She held out one of the evidence bags containing a sample of IV tubing from Williams' case. Max approached carefully, his nostrils flaring as he took in the scent. His reaction was immediate, a low growl, followed by the same alert posture he'd shown with Turner. Sarah's suspicions crystallized. "There's a connection. Whatever Turner was going to inject me with, it was used on the others too." Rodriguez leaned forward. "The lab results came back clean on all their tox screens. Then they're using something that doesn't show up on standard tests." Sarah winced as she shifted position, her recent incision protesting the movement. Max whined softly, pressing closer to her bed. "We need to look deeper." Her phone buzzed with a text from the crime lab. The preliminary analysis of Turner's syringe had revealed traces of a synthetic compound, one that wouldn't appear on standard toxicology screens. The same compound had been found in trace amounts on the IV equipment from Williams' case. "Got you," Sarah whispered, but her satisfaction was short-lived. A commotion in the hallway drew their attention. Through the door's window, they could see hospital staff rushing toward the ICU. Rodriguez's phone rang almost immediately, his face darkened as he listened. That was dispatch. Officer Chen just crashed. They're trying to revive her. Sarah's hand tightened in Max's fur. "They're tying up loose ends. Turner's arrest spooked them." She began pulling off her monitoring equipment, ignoring the protests from both Rodriguez and her still-healing body. "Get me discharge papers. Now." "Collins, you're not cleared." "Janet Chen was my classmate at the academy." Sarah cut him off, her voice hard. "She's down there dying because I stopped Turner before he could finish his job here. They're cleaning house, Lieutenant, and we're running out of time." Max was already retrieving her go-bag from the corner, his training kicking in as Sarah carefully swung her legs over the side of the bed. Every movement sent pain shooting through her abdomen, but she forced herself to focus. "If you won't get me discharge papers, I'll sign out AMA," she told Rodriguez. "But I'm not lying here while they pick us off one by one." Rodriguez studied her for a long moment, then nodded grimly. "I'll get the papers. But you're on restricted duty. You work this from the command center, not the field. Deal? While Rodriguez was gone, Sarah carefully changed into her own clothes, each movement measured and deliberate. Max stayed close, his body tense with protective energy. She checked her weapon and badge, drawing comfort from their familiar weight. Lieutenant Rodriguez returned with her discharge papers and a concerned expression. Chen's stable for now, but they had to put her on a ventilator. Whatever they're using, it targets the respiratory system. Sarah signed the forms without reading them, her mind already mapping out their next moves. We need to pull security footage from all 3 hospitals, focus on staff that had access during shift changes, and I want Max to check the evidence from every case. He can identify that compound better than any lab test. Back at headquarters, Sarah set up in the K9 unit's conference room. Evidence boxes from all 3 cases were spread across the table. Max worked methodically, checking each piece of medical equipment. His alerts were consistent. The same compound appeared in samples from all 3 victims. It's definitely organized, Sarah told Rodriguez as she updated the investigation board. They're targeting cops, using an undetectable drug, and they have access to multiple hospitals across state lines. This isn't just one rogue nurse with a grudge. Max suddenly barked, drawing their attention to a new box of evidence that a junior detective had just brought in. Inside were medical supplies seized from Turner's apartment. As Max sniffed each item, his alerts became more intense. "What is it, boy?" Sarah approached, grimacing against the pain in her side. Max pawed at a small package hidden beneath some gauze pads. Sarah carefully extracted it using gloves. Inside was a business card for a pharmaceutical research company, Next Gen Medical Solutions. The logo looked familiar. She'd seen it on supply boxes in her own hospital room. "Lieutenant," she called, holding up the card, "I think we just found our supplier." Rodriguez took the card, his expression grim. "I'll get a warrant, but Collins—" He held up a hand as she started to stand. "Remember our deal. You run this from here." Sarah nodded reluctantly, knowing she needed to pick her battles. Besides, she and Max had plenty of work to do right where they were. Someone was targeting cops through the medical system, and they'd just found their first real lead. As Rodriguez left to secure the warrant, Sarah looked at her partner. "What do you think, Max? Ready to take down some bad doctors?" Max's answering growl was soft but determined. They had a conspiracy to unravel, and somewhere in Atlanta's sprawling medical community, someone was very nervous about what a determined detective and her 4-legged partner might uncover. Sarah stared at the evidence board in the K9 unit's conference room, her mind drifting back 6 months. The photo of Michael Turner sneered back at her, his booking photo from their previous encounter, not the recent hospital arrest. Max lay at her feet, but his ears perked up as he sensed the shift in her energy. "We should have gotten him then," she muttered, touching the cold case file labeled Atlanta Memorial Deaths. Rodriguez had left to get the warrant for Next Gen Medical Solutions, leaving her alone with the ghost of her past failure. The case had started like any other. 2 deaths at Atlanta Memorial Hospital following routine procedures. Nothing obviously suspicious until a rookie nurse noticed similarities in the patient's charts. Both victims had been witnesses in pending criminal cases. Both had died from seemingly natural complications. Sarah closed her eyes, remembering the day she and Max first walked into that hospital. Max had acted strangely around one of the nurses, Michael Turner, but she'd dismissed it. Dogs sometimes reacted to hospital smells, she'd told herself. Professional bias, she'd thought. "You knew," she told Max now, scratching behind his ears. "You tried to tell me, and I didn't listen." Her phone buzzed. A text from the forensics team. They'd found more distinctive chemical traces in the evidence from Turner's apartment. The compound matched industrial pharmaceuticals produced by Next Gen Medical Solutions, but with slight modifications. Sarah pulled up the old case files on her laptop. The victims' names jumped out at her. Maria Gonzalez, set to testify in a drug trafficking case. Thomas Chen, key witness in a corruption investigation. Their deaths had been ruled as natural causes, respiratory failure in both cases. just like what almost happened to Officer Janet Chen. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Detective James Wong from Internal Affairs stood in the doorway, looking uncomfortable. "Collins, we need to talk about the Turner case. The old one." Max's hackles raised slightly. He'd never liked IAB officers, but Sarah kept her hand steady on his head. "Come in, Wong. I was just reviewing it myself." Wong sat across from her, placing a thick file on the table. "After Turner's arrest, we pulled everything we could find on him. His employment history, financial records, even his medical school applications." He opened the file, revealing a photo that made Sarah's breath catch. It showed a younger Turner, maybe 10 years ago, standing proudly in a group photo of medical students. Next to him was a familiar face, Dr. Victor Nash, the chief of surgery at Atlanta Memorial, during their original investigation. "Nash cleared Turner in the original case," Sarah said slowly, pieces clicking into place. "Said there was no way a nurse could have accessed the medications in question without being noticed. Nash left Atlanta Memorial 3 months ago," Wong continued. "Guess where he works now?" "Next Gen Medical Solutions," Sarah answered, already knowing she was right. Max stood up, sensing her tension. Wong nodded. "As their chief medical officer, he oversees all their research projects, including a classified program developing new anesthetic compounds." Sarah's mind raced. Nash had protected Turner 6 months ago, and now they were working together again. But why target law enforcement officers? What were they trying to hide? She pulled up Turner's original personnel file. Something caught her eye, a gap in his employment history right after medical school. "Wong, can you get me everything on Nash and Turner from 2014 to 2015? There's a missing piece here." "Already did." Wong pulled another folder from his briefcase. Turner worked at a private research facility in Virginia. The facility was shut down after 3 patients died during experimental drug trials. Nash was the lead researcher. The facility's name made Sarah's heart skip. Next Gen Medical Solutions, Early Development Division. "The deaths were ruled accidental," Wong continued. "Nash and Turner were cleared of wrongdoing, but the families claimed their loved ones were used as unwitting test subjects. All 3 victims were involved in ongoing criminal investigations." "Just like Maria Gonzalez and Thomas Chen," Sarah said, "and now they're targeting cops directly." She stood up, ignoring the pull of her stitches. "We need to—" Her phone rang. "Rodriguez. Collins, we got the warrant for Next Gen, but there's a problem. Someone tipped them off. When we arrived, they were already destroying documents. Nash is gone." Sarah looked at the evidence board, at the faces of the victims, past and present. "He won't get far. Max can track that compound anywhere now." She turned to Wong. "I need everything you have on Nash's properties, connections, anywhere he might hide." "Collins." Rodriguez's voice was tight. "There's more. We found Janet Chen's medical records in Nash's office. She wasn't a random target. She was investigating Next Gen for insurance fraud before her surgery." The pieces fell into place. Chen hadn't been targeted because she was a cop. She'd been targeted because she was getting close to something bigger. Something that went beyond modified drugs and medical murders. "Lieutenant," Sarah said, watching Max's alert posture, "I think we're looking at this wrong. This isn't about silencing witnesses anymore. They're using cops as test subjects for something bigger." Wong spread out more files across the table. Property records, bank statements, shell companies. A pattern emerged. Next Gen wasn't just a pharmaceutical company. They were developing something for military applications, using unwitting patients to test their compounds. Sarah's hand found Max's fur, drawing strength from his solid presence. 6 months ago, they'd let Turner slip away because they hadn't dug deep enough, because she hadn't trusted her partner's instincts. "Not this time," she whispered, both to herself and to Max. Looking at Wong, she made a decision. "I need you to get me everything on Next Gen's military contracts, and I need to know who in law enforcement might be helping them cover this up." As Wong left to make his calls, Sarah studied Turner's booking photo again. He wasn't just a rogue nurse with a grudge. He was part of something much darker, something that had been growing in the shadows of Atlanta's medical community for years. Max pressed against her leg, and she felt his low growl of determination. Whatever they uncovered next, whatever dangers awaited them, they would face it together. This time, she would trust her partner's instincts completely, because somewhere in Atlanta, Victor Nash was preparing his next move, and Sarah had a feeling that she and Max hadn't been put on his operating table by chance. The Atlanta Police Department's canine training facility smelled of rubber mats and dog treats. Sarah watched through the observation window as Max worked with a line of evidence containers, each holding medical supplies from different hospitals. 6 other K9 units had been brought in to cross-verify his alerts, but Max's accuracy remained unmatched. "He's got it down to a science," Officer Martinez commented, watching his own dog struggle to identify the correct samples. "How do you train him to detect something this specific?" Sarah didn't answer immediately. She couldn't explain that it wasn't training. It was something deeper, an almost supernatural connection that had developed over years of partnership. Max wasn't just following his nose, he was following his instincts about people, about danger, about threats to his handler. Her phone vibrated. "Rodriguez, Collins, we've got a problem. 2 more officers just went in for routine procedures at Mercy General. One's your old partner, Kate Reynolds." Sarah's heart stopped. Kate had been scheduled for physical therapy after a knee injury. "Tell me you stopped her." "She's already in pre-op. Building's locked down for a bomb threat, but we can't get anyone in or out without tipping our hand. If Nash has people inside—" "He does," Sarah cut him off, already moving. Max was at her side instantly, sensing her urgency. "The next phase of whatever they're testing, it's starting now. They're accelerating because we're getting close." She headed for her car, ignoring the pull of her healing incision. Martinez called after her, "Collins, you're still on restricted duty. My partner's in there." The words came out as a snarl. Max jumped into the K9 vehicle's specially equipped back seat as Sarah started the engine. "Rodriguez, tell Kate's surgical team to delay. Fire alarm, equipment failure, anything. Just buy us time." The drive to Mercy General was a blur of sirens and precise turns. Sarah's mind raced faster than the car. Nash wouldn't be sloppy, not after they'd raided NextGen, but he'd be desperate, and desperation led to mistakes. The hospital parking lot was chaos. People streamed out of the building as fire alarms blared, perfect cover for whatever Nash's people were planning. Sarah spotted Rodriguez near the emergency entrance, coordinating with hospital security. "Kate's still inside," he reported as Sarah approached, Max alert at her heel. "Or 3. But Collins, listen, we found something in Nash's personal files. Your appendicitis. It wasn't random. They've been watching you since the first investigation." The revelation hit hard, but there wasn't time to process it. "We need a way in, something that won't alert them." "Service entrance," a new voice said. They turned to find Dr. Emily Martinez, the doctor who'd helped Sarah after Turner's attempt. "I can get you to all 3 through the back corridors, but if Nash's people see police—" Sarah looked at Max, then at her tactical vest. A decision crystallized. "Get me scrubs. And I need 5 minutes alone with the evidence from Turner's apartment." Rodriguez started to object, but Sarah cut him off. "Nash knows what I look like, but he's never seen me in surgical gear, and more importantly—" She knelt beside Max, meeting his intense gaze. "He doesn't know exactly how Max tracks his drugs." Understanding dawned on Rodriguez's face. "You're going to let them think you're trapped in their net." While Max leads a tactical team through the service corridors. Sarah ran her hand along Max's back, feeling the coiled energy in his muscles. "Nash wants test subjects. Let's give him one he can't resist." The next few minutes were a blur of preparation. Sarah changed into scrubs, hiding a slim tactical radio under the surgical cap. Max worked with the evidence one last time, cementing the scent of NextGen's compound in his mind. Dr. Martinez briefed them on the hospital layout. "Kate's surgery is scheduled for 2 o'clock. Martinez said, checking her phone. "They'll start pre-op procedures any minute." Sarah looked at Max one last time. 6 years of partnership, of trust, of silent communication, distilled into a single moment. "Find me," she whispered, pressing her forehead to his. "No matter what happens in there, Find me. Max's brown eyes held absolutely certainty. Sarah stood, nodding to Rodriguez. Get him to Kate. I'll keep Nash's people focused on me. Oh, Collins, Rodriguez caught her arm. If they realize what you're doing, they won't. Sarah managed a grim smile. They think they're hunting cops. They don't realize they're hunting K9 handlers. Big difference. She turned to Martinez. Ready? The doctor nodded, leading her toward the main entrance. Behind them, Sarah heard Rodriguez giving orders, organizing the tactical response. But her focus was entirely on the hospital ahead, and the trap she was walking into. Max's bark echoed across the parking lot, their private signal developed over countless operations. To anyone else, it sounded like a dog's frustration at being left behind. To Sarah, it was a promise. Find me, protect me, save them. She squared her shoulders and followed Martinez into the hospital. Somewhere in this building, Nash's people were preparing to test their deadly compounds on more police officers. Somewhere in these corridors, her former partner lay vulnerable. And somewhere in the chaos of evacuation and emergency response, a Belgian Malinois was preparing to remind these criminals why the K9 unit's motto was simple but absolute. We hunt, we find, we stop them. Time to spring the trap. The surgical floor of Mercy General was eerily quiet. Most patients had been evacuated, leaving behind the hollow echo of emergency lights and distant alarms. Sarah moved through the corridors in borrowed scrubs, surgical mask hiding her face, every step measured, despite the burning pain in her side. Dr. Martinez had left her near OR3, continuing the pretense of managing the evacuation. Through her hidden earpiece, Sarah could hear Rodriguez coordinating the tactical teams. Somewhere in the building, Max was leading them through the service corridors, tracking the unique chemical signature of NextGen's compounds. A group of medical personnel hurried past, pushing a gurney. Sarah's heart clenched when she recognized Kate Reynolds, her former partner, unconscious on the stretcher. The team turned toward OR3, and Sarah fell into step behind them, just another member of the surgical staff. Subject is prepped, one of the nurses announced, checking a tablet. Dr. Nash wants the new compound administered before primary anesthesia. Sarah's fingers twitched toward a weapon she wasn't carrying. Nash was here personally. This wasn't just another test. This was something bigger. The operating room doors swung open. Sarah followed the team inside, forcing herself to move naturally, despite every instinct screaming to grab Kate and run. The surgical lights cast harsh shadows across the room's blue-draped surfaces. And there he was, Dr. Victor Nash, surgical mask already in place, his eyes showing no recognition as Sarah took her position along the wall. He held up a syringe filled with clear liquid. "Latest generation," he announced to the room. "Military's very interested in this one. Completely undetectable, causes total respiratory failure that mimics natural causes, perfect for field operations." Sarah's blood ran cold. This wasn't about silencing witnesses anymore. This was about weapons development, turning medical procedures into untraceable assassinations. Kate wasn't just a test subject. She was a demonstration for potential buyers. "Sir," one of the nurses spoke up, "the evacuation order is a convenient distraction," Nash cut him off. "By the time anyone realizes what happened, Officer Reynolds will be another tragic case of surgical complications, and our buyers will have proof that the compound works on healthy law enforcement subjects." Sarah's hand crept toward the surgical tray, fingers closing around a scalpel. She couldn't wait for backup. Once that syringe entered Kate's IV, a familiar sound froze everyone in the room. A low, threatening growl. Max stood in the doorway, tactical vest gleaming under the surgical lights. Behind him, Rodriguez and the tactical team filled the corridor, weapons raised. "Step away from the patient," Sarah ordered, pulling off her surgical mask. "It's over, Nash." Nash's eyes went wide with recognition, then narrowed in calculation. "Detective Collins. I should have known. That mutt of yours was always too clever." His hand moved slowly away from Kate's IV line. "But you're too late. This is bigger than you realize." "We know about the military contracts," Sarah said, keeping the scalpel ready. The illegal trials, using innocent people to test your weapons. Weapons? Nash laughed. This is about progress, advancement. Do you know how many governments would pay for untraceable battlefield solutions? How many agencies need ways to eliminate threats without leaving evidence? And how many innocent people have you killed perfecting your solutions? Sarah nodded toward Kate's unconscious form. How many families have you destroyed? Acceptable losses for the greater good. Nash's free hand moved toward his pocket. But then, you won't be around to worry about that. You should have died in that hospital room, Detective. Let me correct that oversight. He pulled out a second syringe, lunging toward Sarah. Max launched himself across the room, but Nash had anticipated this. He kicked over a surgical cart, sending instruments scattering across the floor. Sarah's recent injury slowed her dodge. The syringe grazed her arm, leaving a burning trail. She stumbled, the room spinning. Behind her, she heard gunshots as the tactical team engaged Nash's personnel. Through blurring vision, she saw Max circling Nash, avoiding the scattered instruments, while keeping himself between the doctor and his handler. Nash held his remaining syringe like a weapon. Fascinating, isn't it? Nash's voice seemed to come from far away. A compound that can take down a trained officer in seconds. Imagine what military clients will pay for. Max struck, not at Nash but at the hand holding the syringe. Bone crunched between powerful jaws. Nash screamed, the syringe clattering to the floor. Sarah forced herself to focus through the spreading numbness. "Max," she managed to whisper. "Contain." Her partner shifted tactics instantly, releasing Nash's shattered hand to clamp down on his leg. The doctor went down hard, Max's grip ensuring he couldn't reach any more hidden weapons. Rodriguez appeared in Sarah's fading vision, handcuffs gleaming. "Collins! Stay with me!" "Medic, we need antitoxin here." Sarah tried to respond, but her throat was closing up. The last thing she saw was Max's face above her, his brown eyes fierce with determination and love. "Don't leave me, partner." Dr. Martinez's voice cut through the chaos. "Get me the compound analysis from his pocket. We have the antidote in the dispensary." Darkness took her before she heard the rest. The steady beep of a heart monitor pulled Sarah back to consciousness. Hospital room again, but this time Max's head rested on her lap, his eyes tracking every movement of the medical staff. "Welcome back," Rodriguez said from his chair by the door. "You've been out for 16 hours. Nash and his entire team are in custody. We found their full client list, complete records of every test subject. They're done." Sarah scratched behind Max's ears, drawing comfort from his solid presence. "Kate never received the compound. She's fine. Already threatening to come back to work early." Rodriguez smiled. "You did good, Collins, both of you." Max's tail thumped against the bed. Sarah looked down at her partner, remembering his perfect timing, his unwavering loyalty. "No," she said softly. "He did better. He always does. Because sometimes the finest police work came down to a simple truth. Trust your partner, especially when that partner had 4 legs and a heart bigger than any humans could ever be." 2 weeks after the showdown at Mercy General, Sarah stood in front of the Atlanta Police Department's press room. Max sat perfectly positioned at her side, his tactical vest gleaming under the camera lights. Behind them, a screen displayed photos of Dr. Victor Nash and his co-conspirators, along with the Next Gen Medical Solutions logo. The Joint Task Force operation resulted in 32 arrests across 4 states, Sarah announced to the assembled reporters. "Dr. Nash and his team at Next Gen Medical Solutions have been charged with multiple counts of attempted murder, conspiracy, and illegal weapons development." She paused, letting her hand rest on Max's head. The familiar touch helped steady her as she continued. "More importantly, all surviving victims have been identified and are receiving proper medical care. The antidotes developed from seized next-gen documents have already saved 6 lives." In the front row, Janet Chen sat in a wheelchair, still recovering but very much alive. Next to her, Kate Reynolds stood at attention, her postponed knee surgery now successfully completed at a different hospital. Both women nodded at Sarah, solidarity between survivors. The questions came rapid fire after her statement. Sarah handled them with practiced ease, but her mind drifted to the real victory, the one that wouldn't make headlines. Earlier that morning, she'd stood in the evidence room with Rodriguez, watching Max demonstrate his detection techniques to K9 units from across the country. The FBI had officially adopted his scent identification protocol for investigating medical crimes. Her partner's legacy would help protect others long after this case was closed. "Detective Collins," a reporter's voice cut through her thoughts. "Sources say you were specifically targeted by NextGen. That your appendicitis wasn't natural. Can you comment?" Sarah felt Max press against her leg, offering silent support. The investigation confirmed that Dr. Nash had been monitoring potential threats to his operation. Anyone who got too close to the truth became a target. She managed a small smile. They just didn't count on having to fool a K9's nose along with the blood tests. The press conference wrapped up shortly after. Sarah walked through the station's corridors, accepting congratulations from colleagues, while Max trotted faithfully beside her. They reached the K9 unit's offices, where a surprise waited on her desk. A new commendation medal gleamed in an open box. Not for her, for Max. The first time in department history that a K9 officer had received this specific honor for investigative work rather than physical courage. "He earned it," Rodriguez said from the doorway. "The brass wanted to wait for a ceremony, but I figured you two had been in the spotlight enough lately." Sarah knelt beside her partner, removing his tactical vest before pinning the medal to his therapy dog collar, the same one he'd worn during that crucial hospital visit that started everything. Max sat regally, as if understanding the gravity of the moment. "The final report came in from the FBI lab," Rodriguez continued. "Nash's compound would have been untraceable if Max hadn't identified it. No chemical test would have caught it. We would have lost a lot more officers before figuring it out." Sarah scratched behind Max's ears, remembering all the moments that had led them here. His reaction to Turner in the hospital room, his consistent identification of tainted medical supplies, his perfect timing in the operating room when Nash tried to inject her. "He's always been one step ahead of me," she admitted. "In the first investigation, when I didn't trust his instincts about Turner, I almost let them get away with it." "But you learned," Rodriguez pointed out. "When it mattered most, you trusted him completely. Walked into that OR knowing he'd have your back." A commotion in the hallway drew their attention. Janet Chen was wheeling herself toward them, followed by Kate Reynolds and Dr. Martinez. The doctor had been cleared of any involvement with Nash and had proven instrumental in saving Sarah's life during the final confrontation. "We're heading to the rehabilitation center," Janet announced. "They're setting up a new therapy dog program. Thought your partner might want to help demonstrate, considering he's the reason we're all here to need therapy in the first place." Max's tail wagged at the familiar faces. These were his people now, not just Sarah, but all the ones he'd helped save, the ones who understood that sometimes the strongest partner, the most reliable protector, came with 4 legs and unwavering loyalty. Sarah looked at her recovered colleagues, at the supportive faces of her fellow officers, at the medal gleaming against Max's fur. Nash had tried to build the perfect weapon in a laboratory, but he'd never understood that the most powerful force in law enforcement wasn't a chemical compound or a military contract. It was partnership, trust, the unshakable bond between a handler and her K9, between officers who faced darkness together and emerged stronger. "What do you say, partner?" she asked Max. "Ready to help some more people heal?" Max stood, pressing against her leg in their familiar gesture of unity. Behind them, Rodriguez chuckled. "You know," he said, "I don't think we ever need to worry about doctor's appointments again, not with him screening the medical staff." Sarah smiled, remembering Nash's words about progress and advancement. The real progress wasn't in developing new weapons or untraceable poisons. It was in building connections, trust, and partnerships that made the world safer. As they headed out to the rehabilitation center, Sarah felt the weight of the past weeks finally lifting. They had turned a routine hospital visit into the takedown of an international conspiracy. They had transformed a potential tragedy into a triumph of partnership and determination. And they had proven, once again, that in the ongoing battle between good and evil, sometimes the greatest hero walked on four legs, saw the truth that humans missed, and loved with a purity that no amount of darkness could corrupt. Max had started this case as a visitor, bringing comfort to his handler in a hospital room. He'd ended it as a nationally recognized pioneer in medical crime detection. But to Sarah, he was simply what he'd always been, the best partner she could have ever asked for. Justice had been served, lives had been saved, and somewhere in Atlanta, a Belgian Malinois with a shiny new medal was already looking forward to his next chance to protect and serve, one sensitive nose and loyal heart at a time.